This video is sponsored by NordVPN. This is a phone so hotly anticipated that you would never have imagined it would live up to the tremendous levels of hype, teasers, leaks, rumours that led up to a device that would ultimately become the best-selling Android of all time, the undoubted hero that conquered Apple and changed the smartphone market forever. Hey guys, I'm Ryan Thomas, and I'm of course talking about the Galaxy S3, the GOAT, the one that was advertised absolutely everywhere back in 2012, and that really did pave the way for the utterly brilliant Android smartphones, and maybe even iPhones, that we have today. It came out in multiple variants, outsold pivotal devices like the iPhone X, and competed fiercely with big players coming out on top. More on that after a quick word from today's sponsor. One of the most convenient and handy inventions of the last few years is certainly a VPN, and that's where today's video sponsor NordVPN comes in, with their superb Black Friday and Cyber Monday deals. Not only does this service help you browse anonymously, tunneling your network traffic through another region which helps secure your connection, but it's also just really handy for watching programs and movies that you wouldn't get in your home version of Netflix, for example. Or if like me you are a die-hard Premier League fanatic and you go on holiday, being able to log into your streaming apps just as you normally would without a fuss is brilliant, and NordVPN allows for that. It works on Mac, Windows, iOS and our beloved Android. It's easy to install and get set up, and if you go to nordvpn.com/androidpolice, you'll get up to 77% off a 2-year plan and 3 months extra, so check out that link in the video description, and a big thanks to NordVPN for sponsoring today's content. It all started with Samsung's vision to create a phone that felt organic, that mimics the flow of water and wind in its hardware and its software. And once you know about it, you really cannot unsee its uncanny curves and OS design, even in the marketing material like the TV ads. You can see what Samsung was really going for, and it did a great job of bringing that feeling into the user experience. Using skeuomorphism in early TouchWiz, there was always sort of character to the design, whether you liked it or not. Of course, the context we have 13 years later is that TouchWiz might generally provoke feelings of annoyance and frustration with just how bloated and heavy that software felt back in the day. In fact, it was noted in many reviews of the time as well, so it's not just back in retrospect. But the software played a massive role in making the phone feel fully featured, the same way it turned many off Android for a long time and gave Google's operating system a bit of a stigma for being buggy, laggy and cheap feeling. The hardware though was perhaps just as divisive as the software. Where the then current iPhone 4S's compact glass sandwich felt upmarket and luxurious, the thin, plasticky, almost toy-like Galaxy S3 held side by side just did not feel nearly as premium, and this was long before Samsung's complete reimagination of its hardware design from 2016 onwards. And the Galaxy S3 to this day feels almost impossibly thin and light for its time, but boasting a 4.8-inch 720p Super AMOLED screen, not only blasting the iPhone out of the water, but also besting the HTC One X. This is where Samsung really had a trick up its sleeve. The AMOLED displays look so much punchier and more impressive compared to the IPS units in its competitors, and of course we all know now that Samsung's panels were so good that many competing models used Samsung display screens. Leading up to the Galaxy S3's launch in 2012, there was speculation that the S3 would feature a 1080p screen and a 12 megapixel camera, which would have been crazy specs for the time. The Galaxy S3, of course, as we know, did not ship with either of those things, but the 2013 Galaxy S4 did ship with specs pretty close to that rumoured feature set. The AMOLED screen, the 8 megapixel camera, 1080p 30fps video recording, 1 or 2 gigs of RAM depending on the SKU that you bought, and different SoC depending on the regions as well. There were actually quite a few different variants of the Galaxy S3, including a Mini and a Neo, with different tech specs themselves, but the star of the show was for sure that massive display, even if it wasn't 1080p, and boy did it make a splash. Journalists and consumers alike loved the Galaxy S3. It was fresh, it was packed with great specifications, offered so many features, and of course was capable with plenty of grunt under the hood. The phone was almost unanimously praised, and there was no shortage of demand either. At the final count, Samsung sold 70 million Galaxy S3 models, making it one of the best-selling smartphones ever and outright the best-selling Android, beating successors in the Galaxy S4 and the Galaxy S7 series that both sit just below it in the overall Android smartphone standings. These phones were absolutely everywhere. Suddenly, people wanted to have a big screen phone. Remember, the S3 was considerably larger than the most popular iPhones of the time, and it wouldn't be long actually before Apple would make a similarly sized phone in 2014 with its iPhone 6, and even bigger 6 Plus. And those phones would go on to be the best-selling smartphones of all time, 225 million units. Actually, before the iPhone 6, Apple tried to have the Galaxy S3 banned in the US, a couple of times actually, regarding what it believed to be patent infringements. I guess when you look at the material in the legal documents, you can kind of see the resemblance here. The screenshots were from the iPhone 4 and the Galaxy S, and yeah, okay, I'm sure at the time it would have been a huge shock to everyone that, completely different software ecosystems could look so similar. These days though, you'll find so many samey looking software skins, and nobody seems to really care enough to make a fuss about them. It is quite funny how things turn out in the end. Anyway, the Galaxy S3 was immediately labelled by many journalists as the king of Android, and though there have certainly been bumps in the road over the years since the Galaxy S3, largely the Galaxy S line in general has remained at the top of Android with regards to market share and phone sales. The Galaxy Ultra is generally considered by much of the mainstream as the best Android you can buy, particularly in the West, and that reputation Samsung built for its feature-rich, high-end smartphones really blossomed with the S3. It wasn't the first in the line, but it was more of an inflection point for the Galaxy S to hit the highs that it's at today. Though definitely not entirely made up of Galaxy S models, Samsung still holds the top spot for worldwide smartphone shipments in 2025, competing pretty fiercely actually with Apple, but holding out on that top spot against Apple, going off the numbers that IDC research has shown. With the Galaxy S26 series on the horizon, it is pretty interesting to look back at earlier models and just see where we've come from. And there was perhaps no model more important to smartphones than the Galaxy S3. Guys, this might not be my absolute favourite smartphone, maybe not even my favourite Android, but it's such an important, pivotal phone that you just can't help but appreciate what the Galaxy S3 did for Android and smartphones in general as a whole back in 2012. I remember this phone being advertised absolutely everywhere. Many of my friends and family had these. Some of them even had multiple, like they had the Mini, they had the Neo, they might have just had 2 versions of this. What a beast of a smartphone. Anyway, I'd love to hear your Galaxy S3 related stories in the comment section. And whilst you're down there, be sure to hit like if you enjoyed today's content and subscribe to never miss another upload. Thank you all so much for watching this video. I've been Ryan Thomas and I will catch you later. Cheers.